I'm Nicola Davies.
And I'm Cathy Fisher.
And we're going to talk to you about our new picture book, The New Girl. I've done the words and Cathy's done the beautiful artwork. Now the idea for the story came to me because I was told a real story about a real little girl starting in a new school. And she didn't speak the language that was spoken in that school, and she was finding it very difficult to make friends, and actually she was being a bit bullied. And then one day she revealed a wonderful talent. She had this amazing ability to fold beautiful origami flowers out of paper. And that made the whole class see her in a new way. And that's what gave me the idea for this story, about a little girl starting in a new school, being bullied and finding a way to connect with her new environment and make new friends. But it's told from the point of view of the bully, who is the person who feels very, very sorry about the way she's behaved at the end of the story. How did you start with the illustration?
I imagine the characters and I make them in my head. I do masses of thinking until they form. And the girl who was the bully, I wanted to be very much Northern Europe or Northern America. And the new girl was obviously probably from Japan. So I imagined her and how she would feel travelling to a new and cold and very different country. And I imagined the beginning process of that before she travelled, which is what I did. The first page was really about. And for me, the new girl always had a special little spirit. She was very sweet and quiet and gentle and had her own little magical world around her and was pretty much, I would say, protected from bullying by her gentle kindness. And the bully, I think, for me, she was a sort of boisterous, happy girl, and then this new girl who seemed very strange to her has come into the school.
It's so funny hearing you talk about it, because I don't think we had really any of those conversations about where we imagined.
Because when it started, I was in Australia, you were over
That's
here.
right, but you're describing exactly what I saw in my head. You know, for me, she was always a Japanese child, not quite in traditional Japanese costume, but Japanese children have a very distinctive clothing style. And I imagined her being from somewhere quite warm in Japan, and I imagined the school being either Northern Europe or maybe Canada, somewhere where it was really, really cold in the winter, and where she had to be wrapped up in layers and layers and layers and layers. What was the most difficult bit for you?
Starting. I always start by doing lots of sketches, and then I do a storyboard of small pictures. But that changes, because once you start the first, I do in big double page spreads and I do it quite large, that starts to tell you what the next page is about, which then starts to tell you what the next one is about. So it actually shifted from my original drawings. And I wanted a sense in the beginning of her feeling very isolated. I wanted a sense of space, a slightly Japanese feel in terms of space and colour. You just get a sense of what it's like to walk into a big, new, scary building. And I exaggerated sizes of steps and things like that, because I remember starting school with a massive great pair of steps that were wide and scary, and it's that sort of scary feeling. And even though she's all right in herself, it's just that entry into school, and you see the school kids all there, all friends, all know each other. It's quite scary, daunting, and she's left out.
And that's very, because the school where I came across the story about the real little girl who made the origami flowers was an international school, a very modern.
So was it real initially?
Yeah, it was. That was the real story. That's what gave me the idea for it. That's what started it off. But what fed the story was the fact that when I was little, when I was in primary school, I went to several different primary schools, so I was always the new girl. But I am ashamed to say now that I have been on both sides of that bullying relationship. So I have been both bullied and I have been the bully. I understand where that bullying feeling comes from and how horrible it is. and how horrible it feels and how hard it is to get out of it. So I wanted to write from that perspective too, because bullied children need to be supported, but bullies also need to be helped and shown a way of changing their behaviour.
I remember my primary school very well, very unhappy, big school, big convent school, and I was one of the children that would disappear, sink into the background. And I remember once them saying, "Whose side are you on then?" Because there were two sort of groups and they were sort of all bullying each other. And I'd say, "Well, I'm going to say I'm on their side, and then but I'm going to be on your side really." And then I whispered to the other ones, "I'm going to say I'm their side, but I'm on your side really." Very weak.
No, clever. I think that's really smart. I never thought of doing anything as clever as that.
I just hated confrontation.
Yeah, I think I did too when I was at school. But but that feeling of wanting to be invisible, just wanting to fade into the background. And actually what we've done with the dedication of the book is we've dedicated it to children who find it difficult to be seen. And I think that's true for both the bullied and the bullies, because then neither side is really being themselves.
Yeah. And in the opening pages, when you see images of school steps and classrooms, and there's a page where she's sitting alone eating her meal, I wanted it to be very sparse and empty and hollow, because there's that sad sort of feeling, not just for her but for the bullies too, where it's not much colour, there's nothing on the walls, it's all very simple, plain, pushback. And I think I wanted space for your words as well, because they're minimal but they're really beautiful.
But you really get the sense from your illustration of everybody in this situation being locked into something that is unpleasant for everyone, both the bullies and the bully. And that picture of her sitting at the table with her little feet crossed over is just so poignant and beautiful. And one other thing that I wanted to ask you about, which is about the hands and the paper folding, because that's such a difficult thing to do and you've done it so beautifully. I mean, could you say a little bit about that? I mean, I know what the story is, but...
Well, they're actually my daughter's hands, and she is 22 but has tiny little lovely girl hands. And she can do fantastic origami. So without Molly, I actually would find it all very difficult, because she folded up the flowers for me and I used her. She was my model for drawing the hands and for doing all the folding and for the origami flowers.
I'm definitely going to have an origami lesson from Molly. First time I actually read this book to an audience of children, I can fold the flower at the end of it. One of the things I absolutely adore about working with you is that you get the narrative, you get the story at such a deep level that you'll put things in that aren't in the words, that when I look at the illustration I think, oh yeah, of course that's there. I'd love to hear you say something about that. Such a fantastic process.
Well, it's entirely inspired by your words, I have to say, because there's something about your words that say so much more than there is. And I think the luxury for me of being an illustrator is that I can say things that aren't said in words, so I can feed in emotions and stuff. And one of the things I wanted to do was, for example, when the girl screws up the bit of paper in anger and she throws it, I wanted to show that there was a vase of flowers that perhaps Kiki had put there that's Japanese, and she'd perhaps put some of the flowers she'd made into it on the teacher's desk at some point, and she'd knocked it over and it had fallen on the floor, and I illustrated it. And then Kiku makes her a new flower, and at the very end I wanted to show how that broken vase had been fixed, so that, you know, something broken can be fixed with beauty, which is Japanese, I can't remember the word for it, but Japanese make beautiful ceramics that are broken and fill it in with gold.
And that's such an important part of picture books, and such an important part of what children and adults can get from picture books. It's the importance of that visual literacy, of making that marriage in your head, in the moment, of the words and the pictures. It's kind of an integration of what it is to be human,
and
actually.
it's trying to illustrate emotions and feelings through pictures that children can feel and pick up on and recognise themselves.
Even if they don't understand what's
Even
going
if
on
they
in the
don't-
words,
yeah.
they get the emotion from the picture, and you are the absolute genius at doing that.
I love working with you.
I love